Hey there, welcome to your positive energy recharge. I am Jade Sterling, your women's health nurse and coach. I'm here to help you to balance your hormones, master your emotions, and live a life you love, especially when it comes to your life partnership, or what's traditionally called in today's society, your marriage. And I'm going to be referring to it between relationship, partnership, marriage, because this might look different for you depending on the context of your life, your morals, values, ethics, and how you've chosen to define yourself and create yourself in this particular lifetime. But I feel like this is a really important one because I did a very short 60-second reel on 9 very important principles for keeping a happy marriage. And it went gangbusters. And it seems that this is a topic that people are very interested in. And I realized I haven't shared the 9 principles before. So this is a perfect opportunity to do so. This is a list of principles that has been compiled by Dr. Paul Jenkins, who you will know I'm a big champion of. That if you go back to Tuesday chats and you look for Dr. Paul Jenkins, in the videos there you'll find me in an interview with him. He is talking about the work that he does, the work that I have had the privilege to actually be able to train in, and now this is part of what I teach. I incorporate it into all the work that I do. And Dr. Paul has created this list of 9 principles for a happy marriage, because after 30 plus years of experience as a clinical psychologist, he kind of found things that were working and that weren't working. And just like if you look back in the video for the 7 key relationships, you'll find this is not a list that is prescriptive. This is not for you to subscribe to this and then decide that this is how you're going to live your life. This is a suggested observation that from his experience, his clinical experience and his life experience, that if you have an awareness of these 9 principles and in this order, you'll actually have the opportunity to experience a happy, healthy, fulfilling marriage. I myself put it to the test, just like Dr. Paul's 7 key relationships. I wasn't skeptical, but I didn't want to just take it for granted because I'd done that in so many other different areas of my life and things hadn't always worked out the way that I wanted or thought that they would, or I'd just taken someone else's ideas and suggestions as my own and then realized that they didn't apply to me. And that was a recipe for disaster in my own life. So I came to Dr. Paul's work with a grain of salt after 40 odd years of experience in life myself, also as a women's health nurse, and decided that I was going to just put them on my fridge. I explained this back in the video, 7 key relationships. Put them on my fridge and just become aware of them and see how they're working in my life. And then from there, I start to actually consciously apply and make choices depending on how these particular principles feel. Today I'm going to be talking about the 9 principles of marriage, which are also on my fridge. And refer back to the 7 key relationships for that video for more information on that. But it is a really incredible portal for exponential personal development, being involved in a life partnership or marriage. I have found, for me, this is the biggest one. This is bigger than parenting. This is bigger than my career or bigger than other family relationships that I have the opportunity to interact with and learn and grow. But for me, my marriage has certainly been the biggest place of growth, expansion, contraction, and then further expansion, where it's ongoing. And so these 9 principles I'm going to share with you today have been a huge influence in helping me navigate this particular relationship and the relationship with myself that is the most important within a relationship between 2 people along the way. So the first principle of a happy marriage is positivity. And I remember mentioning that to a client once and she rolled her eyes, couldn't stop herself, couldn't help herself. And she said, oh, look, I'm sorry, but positivity, we're going to just think positive. We're going to just think our way through to happy interactions and harmonious relationships with our partnerships. And I can understand there is a nice fluffy kind of old school culture around positivity. But if you go back to my video about the power of positivity, you'll actually see Dr. Paul has created a model which I refer to as the mind compass, and it helps us to figure out where we are in space of time and where we want to go. Now, if you can understand that positivity is a principle is an active, natural law of life, like gravity, that I think is such a great example. We don't have to think about gravity. We just wake up and it's on. We don't have to get out of bed every morning and wonder, oh, I hope gravity's on today. It just is. And look, if you walk off a cliff, you're going to go down. So it doesn't matter whether you believe in it or not. This is just a principle that applies in life. And positivity, which can actually be broken up into a couple of different components, which are also natural laws of life, is one of those. It is a principle, an application of an active way of being applied in your life to then produce a result. And so again, if you go back to the positivity video, you'll find that positivity is a choice. And until you see it as a choice, it's not. And this is very powerful and important when it comes to, it's your third key relationship on your list of 7 key relationships, your relationship with your life partner or your relationship with your spouse or whoever you've chosen to spend the rest of your life with. Positivity is a choice. And for me, this actually means finding hope and being able to keep hope alive in that part of your relationship. Because if you don't have hope, then there is an internal inner spark inside you that cannot ignite with the circumstances of your life, that doesn't help you to actually live a life that feels like it's burning with purpose from the inside. And you can see through positivity and actually actively choosing your thoughts based on what's happening in your circumstances, that if you have hope for each other, you have hope for your relationship, you have hope for a better future, you also hope, because things could be worse, that there is hope for things that are better. That can spark that positivity in your life where you get to be that support for each other. So a little bit more about that principle of positivity, go back to the power of positivity video. But in terms of the first principle of a happy marriage, it's being able to turn each other's frowns upside down, but not because you want to feel better about how the other person's feeling, but because you genuinely want a hopeful, purposeful, absolutely passion-fueled relationship. Now, sometimes when I've said passion-fueled relationship, people again go, you know, a little bit of whatever there. But passion to me is purpose. Passion is feeling motivated. Passion is feeling driven. Passion is even feeling hopeful. There is a difference between passion and being attached to the outcome and actually having a very clear picture about what you want and not compromising in any way, shape or form to get to that vision. Passion is great in certain circumstances. It's certainly a big part of the kindling of the fuel for a relationship when it starts in its early days. But for longevity, passion needs to turn into purpose. And purpose is driven by positivity, which is driven by hope for a future that the two of you share. And that comes into some of the other principles that come into this list as well. Principle 1, positivity. Number 2 is values. You've got to have them and you've got to be able to share them. So the fact that you have certain values and morals and ethics that make you the person that you are, part of enjoying a relationship where you're connected and you're working towards a joint purpose is having values that match. And I do actually see this often. It's the second most important principle, because if you don't have your values and ethics and morals in alignment, things won't go very far for very long, or they'll fall apart a little bit down the line and perhaps you won't even know why. But even recently I had a client who was trying to negotiate how she was going to move forward in her relationship, because she'd had a partner, or this particular partner had actually been unfaithful at one point in time, and they were trying to heal and repair. Now, I do believe that healing and repairing is completely available to you, no matter how bad or deep the damage. But when the foundation is cracked, both people have to do a lot of work to be able to repair the foundation and then rebuild their relationship upon a new foundation. And a lot of the time, unfortunately, people go back in and they pull apart some of the construction. They want to look at the foundation and they want to pull apart the repair that they've done and look at the cracks. Not always helpful. We'll be talking more about that too, but it is important that your values are set in concrete. If they're broken, that they're rebuilt and reestablished, and a new foundation and a new structure can be created for you. It is doable. But this particular client that I had, her partner was full of so many insecurities because he himself had broken some of the foundations, some of the values. And we actually uncovered within the course of this one particular session that his values in certain areas didn't actually match hers. And that was what was causing the disharmony. And to be able to create a firm foundation, we definitely need to have values that are really strong within us, but they have to be aligned with your partner. Principle number 3, humility. Humility is a big one. And humility is not being a doormat. Humility is not just agreeing with everything that everybody else is saying. Humility is not being submissive. Humility is not a passive action. It's actually very active. And sometimes humility, I think, is the strongest action of all, where if your partner is experiencing feelings, big feelings about something, that could be about anything. It could be about their workplace, it could be about your parenting, it could be about finances, but it could also be about you. There is a point where the strongest thing you can do is pull your lens back, regardless of what it is, making it not about you, and realizing that your partner has the right to feel their feelings, regardless of what the circumstance is. And humility to me is allowing your person to feel their feelings fully, without judgment, without criticism, without blame or shame. And so it is a process of removing your opinion for a little while about what you think should happen in a certain circumstance and allowing space for a person to feel their feelings. That to me is what humility is in a relationship. This can actually happen in so many different ways in your daily life, just showing up and pulling your lens back as the observer and letting people feel their feelings. Of course, there's a certain amount of boundary that needs to be, you need to just be aware of, because if people decide that you are the reason why they're feeling their feelings, there is a place where you need to let that happen, but only not at the cost of your personal safety, is what I'm trying to say. So in a position of where you're not feeling safe, or in abusive or maladaptive relationships, these need to be addressed in a different way. And I've talked before about therapy and medical intervention, or any kind of health professional intervention, is like when your house is on fire. You need to call in health professionals to get the blaze under control and establish you in a place of safety. But if something is happening and it's not actually going to affect your place of personal safety, then you are in a position to be able to pull yourself back and let your person feel their feelings. regardless of what that might look like, and then step in with curiosity, not control. Trying to be curious, not be controlling. Being attentive, not defensive or reactive. Just being aware that humility is just being present, not being attached to your own ego and your particular thoughts and opinions of what's happening in a circumstance or situation. Allowing your person to feel your feelings, and that is a powerful, powerful skill and tool and principle to apply into your life partnership. Number 4 is forgiveness. Forgiveness as well is one of those principles where it's not about being submissive. It's not about being a doormat. It's not about just accepting everything and surrendering to everything that is. But forgiveness is also a very active form of unconditional love. It's being able to be aware that you can still love someone and be angry at them. You can still love someone and feel shame or feel blame or feel frustration or resentment or all the negative emotions that we don't like to feel. You can still love someone and feel negative emotion at the same time. Sometimes that doesn't make sense and it feels like, can negative and positive emotion exist at the same time? Well, technically they can't, because emotion is a physiological event that happens when you have a thought about something that you believe. It releases chemicals into your bloodstream and that creates an emotion. That emotion will last in your body for approximately 90 seconds and then dissipate unless you have another thought that triggers another reaction. That creates another chemical reaction that creates emotion. It's literally energy in motion. But when it comes to forgiveness, forgiveness is the principle applied when you realize that your love can still be unconditional and you can still experience negative emotion in relation to your relationship. So have your feelings. This is your opportunity to feel your feelings. In some ways, it's almost the opposite of humility. For you, in a particular situation where you are trying to grapple with how you're feeling about your feelings in a certain circumstance or situation, and being able to process that and recognizing that love can be present, but not necessarily the primary emotion that you're feeling at a given time. And so being able to understand that and then come back to the base of unconditional love and understanding, that is forgiveness. Another thing that I find really interesting, and look, I have had the same experience myself, is that sometimes we think that our relationship can't hold negative emotion. I used to just think that if my husband and I were having an argument or an issue would come up that I thought was deep, a deep wound, whether it was my deep wound or his, whether it was created by both of us or something in our foundation we think or thought that had cracked, I immediately would go to the place where, well, then this can't move forward. This relationship can't move forward. And there's probably lots of reasons for that. There could be past relationship trauma for me and maybe for him. There could also be things that happen from childhood. We have to take those things into consideration. Again, I know sometimes people roll their eyes. They don't quite know where to place themselves. When I remember that fabulous story from Brené Brown when she talks about how she had her breakdown and she realized that she couldn't control her life and that things were just, there were certain circumstances and things that were just outside of her control. And she went to her therapist and she sat down and she said, right, I don't want to talk about childhood. I don't want to go back to past trauma. I just want some actionable, useful strategies, thanks. And her therapist says, nothing. And she says, oh, it's bad, isn't it? And her therapist said, it's neither good nor bad. And her response was, man, this is going to suck. I love that story. Go and have a look at Brené Brown's TED Talk on vulnerability if you haven't seen it already. Surely there can't be another person in the world who hasn't seen it, but I've seen a lot of her content and actually haven't come across that TED Talk in a long time. Go and look it up if you haven't seen it. It's just magic and wonderful. But in that particular context, we're still talking about forgiveness, and we're talking about that unconditional place that you come back to. And it's that space where sometimes you have to understand that you are coming from your past and you are going to show up with all the experience that you have, and sometimes you can't actually change that. And that's where I was explaining my own experience, where I would experience negative emotional interaction or confrontation with my husband, and my thought was, our relationship can't hold this, the relationship needs to end. And I have seen through the course of my own experience with my marriage, and then starting to work with clients who their foundations sometimes have been shattered into pieces, absolutely obliterated by an affair or a divorce or a family tragedy or a child trauma or a trauma associated with their own children they've had through their marriage, and seen people repair. It actually still makes me a little bit choked up. Seeing people repair their foundations with such intention and such a real desire with an open heart to heal and get better and move forward. And that is true forgiveness. Principle number 4. Principle number 5 is respect. And people talk about respect being a 50-50 relationship, a 50-50 partnership with your life partner. And I don't actually teach that at all. And I don't actually believe that at all fundamentally anymore. I think respect has to be 100% your own responsibility. And that needs to be in regards to yourself. If you can respect yourself 100%, have your own back, love yourself fiercely, put these principles into action for yourself, forgive yourself, have your own values, have hope for yourself, then you will show up so authentically in your relationship that you will be able to foster the connection that is required to create mutual respect for your partner in your partnership. And if you don't, then that partnership is complete and is no longer meant to help you move forward to become the next version of yourself, or continue to expand and contract and expand and contract. It has served its purpose for you and you're done. But I believe that the respect needs to be 100% your own responsibility on the inside for yourself. That's when you show up for your partner authentically. That's when you can gauge how you connect. Because for me, respect is connection. And you can only connect with someone else if you can fully connect with yourself. So, respect is 100% your responsibility, and that's how it will fuse and create a mutual experience for your interactions and just your coexistence with your life partner in your daily life. Number 6 is love, the principle of love. Now, love is actually a very active principle. The definition of love, as defined by the ancient Chinese proverb that I have on my wall of unknown origin, says that love is the act of giving, the act of unconditional giving and showing up in a way that for you feels good for you on the inside to give service to others. So love is giving and service. And I love that way of looking at it, that your relationship is not something that you get, because by giving and by showing up in partnership to help somebody else's own personal growth and development, that's when you receive the rewards and the growth and development for yourself. So your intention is to give and serve others. And that for you is the biggest portal for personal growth and development that is available to you if you'll be open to it. Of course, we are conditioned in this society that relationships really will give us something that we don't have on the inside. We have everything that we need. And our job in relationship is to show up for others and help them to help us get what we need. It's all reciprocal, if that makes sense. I've explained in another video, probably a few other videos, that I have my definition of God that I have on my fridge that I tried to explain to my kids how I see it and understand it. It's a big light bulb. And coming from that light bulb are rays, and out inside the edge of the rays are people, and then people emanate into other people, and we are all a part of the big light. That is the big light bulb that I call God. Now, if you look at it that way, we're all connected and we're all here to be a part of the big light bulb. And so if our motivation every day is to wake up and with joy and enthusiasm bursting out of our hearts and to give to others, what that does is open us up to a greater electrical current to receive more light and love ourselves. And that is how we open. It's not about collecting what we need so then we're in a place to be able to open and give. The giving has to come first, and that's what love is. Have a think about that. Have a little try about just being aware of that thought and applying some of that giving into your life today, and see how it works from the inside out. Leave a comment below and let me know how it works for you. Principle number 7 is compassion. And compassion just basically means giving a hoot about each other's feelings. And it kind of comes back to humility, where it's giving people the space to have their feelings and realizing that when people are having their feelings, it's not always about you. It's actually never about you. It's always about them. Because remember, where do your feelings come from? And this is how we generate compassion. Our feelings come from the thoughts that we're having about what's happening outside of ourselves. We have a thought, we believe it, it releases chemicals into our bloodstream. We feel a feeling, and then that feeling tells us how to show up in our daily life. Every feeling that somebody feels is a result of a thought that they've had, not a result of an action that somebody else has done. It's not the result. The circumstance is an action that somebody else has done, but it's the thought that you have about that action that creates the feeling that you feel. And I've told this example before, and I'm sure there's got to be better ones, but my husband started smoking after 10 years of us being together and never knowing him to be a smoker. He had been a smoker prior to us being together, and he just decided one day that this was something he needed to go back to doing. Now, I still sometimes don't have the right words for it. I never said the right words for it because I'm a healthcare professional. So if you're watching this and you are a smoker, there is no discrimination, there is no judgment, but we have health guides and regulations, and now we have scientific evidence and research that shows us that smoking does damage to your body, your physical, your mental, and your emotional health and well-being. And for me, that bundles up into your spiritual health and well-being as well. And my husband and I had started off on a very spiritual path, and so when he started to smoke, I couldn't understand it at all. And I had zero compassion for that, to be able to understand it. Absolutely none. But this was part of the process, being able to understand the feelings that I was having about his smoking were actually coming from what I was thinking about it. I thought it was awful, gross, disgusting. He would come in and he would smell, and I would be like, don't touch me. And having those thoughts was telling my body that something was wrong. It was creating negative emotion in my body, dialing up my nervous system. And I became very reactive, very judgmental, very critical, and that's how I was showing up. And of course, his smoking then increased because he felt more stressed about what was happening in our relationship. I'm not sure if that's exactly the reason why it increased, but anyway, that is part of the process, isn't it? That is also, it's part of what happens, because what you fear, you attract, because you dial up your nervous system that makes you wired for more fear. And that is good to know. So when I started working on these principles for myself, trying to find hope, the fact that was this actually going to damage our relationship? Didn't have to. Certainly had an aversion to the smell of smoke and tobacco in the pockets when I would find things around, and I found that I needed to find the right thought that my brain believed to settle down my nervous system. And now this, we go back to the gratitude exercises that I'm always rabbiting on about, that if you go to the Tuesday Chats video with Randy Sparks about sparks of gratitude in your life, gratitude is the quickest way to hope. And hope is that thought that plants that seed in your mind that helps you to dial down your nervous system and activate, actually access positive emotion to help you dial down a circumstance and come from a better place than reactivity and reaction, judgment, criticism. The place where we can settle in to finding solutions to our perceived problems, if we realize they're actually problems at all. And in this particular circumstance, I was able to cultivate some compassion for my husband, that there must have been a reason that was stressful enough for him that he decided that he needed a substance to help him through it. And he never smoked at home. And I was really grateful for that. He would just come home reeking of tobacco. But when I realized that that was my issue and that I had a moment of compassion, able to access it just a little bit to dial down my nervous system, I was actually able to have a conversation and say, hey, think you could wash your hands and face when you come home before you touch me, before you come close? Because this triggers a response in me that dials me right up and stresses me right out. And he was able to find a place of compassion where he had no idea, of course, but he realized that, oh, this really affects you in this way, and he cared. This is the mutual compassion to be able to cultivate as that seventh principle. He started washing his hands, washing his face, and coming in. And then just from that action, I realized that, he does care about my feelings, even though he's still smoking. And doesn't care about how I want him to stop smoking. He actually cares about my feelings. And from that place, we were able to have better conversations, better connections, diving deeper into the actual issue, rather than just looking at the superficialities of what was happening on the surface level. We got deeper and we were able to unpack and make sense and move forward. Compassion, principle number 7. Principle number 8 is work. It actually still takes work. I do know, and I have observed some relationships that are pretty easy and cruisy, and sometimes I've thought, that's so fortunate, that's so lucky, it's so easy, with grace and ease, to be able to move through your day-to-day life without having to worry about conflict or interactions that are questionable, or maybe parenting, or if you're working together, or whatever it is. But it still is something that if you cruise, it's going to be okay and harmonious and lovely experience. How much are you going to grow? And so even in those relationships where they're easy, then it still is so powerful and impactful to have a joint goal that you are working towards together as a couple. Whether that is your parenting, whether that is a joint business venture, whether that is like a few life goals on your bucket list that you have joint visions together. Having that to be able to work towards creates a common thread and a common purpose in your daily life that some people think is not necessarily unnecessary, but it's not a priority. It actually is. To be able to keep the threads of your tapestry interwoven when you're creating your life, so that then later on you can look back and you can look at the tapestry you've created together. And you'll both have a totally different perspective of it, no doubt. One will see shades of red and the other ones will see the shades of green, but you'll still be able to share the fruits of the enjoyment of, and when I say fruits, I'm like, wow, I wish I'd chosen a metaphor about planting seeds. But at the same time, whatever metaphor that you choose, the tapestry, whether it's the fruits of the tree that you grow, either way, it's going to be something that you're both going to be able to enjoy. Some of you might be gardeners, some of you might be creatives. Either way, you can enjoy the art or the fruit that you've created together along the way. And that is part of your foundation, of the structure of your relationship. But also, if it is hard work and you feel like you're building a 10-story, 100-story skyscraper, then that is actually credit to you. Can you imagine the view when you get up there? What that's going to look like? If it is hard work, it's actually going to be worth it. If you have positivity, if you have your hope, if you have your values, if you're able to meet each other in humility, if you're able to forgive, love, have respect for yourself and each other, find compassion, the work is all going to be worth it. And the final principle, number 9, is wholesome recreation. That's a nice, I suppose, fancy way of saying have some fun. Because without fun, what's the point? Really, keeping things light and bright and enjoyable in ways that you both enjoy it, having that fun component actually in alignment with each other, even if it's just one thing, can make such a difference to the depth of your relationship and your whole experience of feeling connected and feeling fulfilling and worthwhile. And I'm sure Dr. Paul refers to it as wholesome recreation, because I know I've seen plenty of couples who have got, like, yeah, we've got recreation that we do together, and sometimes it's not so wholesome, which means that it can be something that can actually be destructive behavior. It can be something that maybe a glass of wine or two is recreation that can be done in moderation. But having a couple of bottles of wine a night might not be the best thing for your health. It might not be the best source of recreation for you to be able to have, because that won't necessarily create longevity, because it's going to shorten your lifespan, the lifespan of yours or your partner's or both. So that's why I'm sure he uses the term wholesome recreation, because it's looking at something that's actually going to fuel your health and well-being on the inside as well as the outside. But look, I had some client who the thing that they liked to go and do together was extreme sports. And look, that's pretty wholesome and recreational as long as everything goes according to plan. So you've just got to find something. For me and my husband, really, it's camping. Oh, it's our thing. If we can just get in the car and either put the caravan on the back, throw the tent in the back, it's become what we do with our family. Meditation is still a thing, is still a go-to thing, that is something that's done separately, but he goes off and does his retreat and I go off and do my retreat. And in a way, it's still something that we have in common, but we do it separately. But still having those things where you can spend time gardening and drinking cups of tea and just having a chat about global politics or the state of the world, the environment, the reason why we are here. Who are we? Existential conversations. Whatever it is that works for you. It could be playing tennis. It could be just going for a drive. That's something else that we've learnt over the years, is driving long trips is something that we love to do. Just being stuck in a car with nowhere to go for 20 hours at a time is actually something that we enjoy doing, because we get a real chance to chat and connect and be together. So whatever that is for you, it is a really important part of creating a marriage that has depth, that feels fulfilling, and, as I said, worthwhile. To wrap up, I had this beautiful dream about 2 nights ago where I was talking to, and I knew at the time, and I can't remember who it is now, but it was a famous artist who had written a song, and I was singing the song in my dream. And they sat me down after I'd finished singing, and they said to me, you know, there's 2 levels to a song, to performing a song, to writing a song and performing a song. There's the lyrics and the music. It's this level where we have to learn the technicality of the words and the phrases and the notes and where they land, and then the music itself and how it supports the words and the notes and the phrases, and those are at this level where we learn the music and we learn the groove of the song. Then there's another level to creating and then performing the music, where we drop in to this other level that is not in the thinking part of the brain. It's the part that sits in here in the center of our chest, where we feel it, and we feel it so deeply, and we experience the words. We don't just know them. We experience the notes. We don't just know them. We experience the music on the inside. And I feel like that dream has actually dramatically changed my perspective of life, or helped me to drop in a different way, because it's taken the urgency out for a start, for me to realize that to drop in, you have to be calm and clear, and then showing up to be able to understand the words, not just of music, but what people are saying, what people are doing. And this is why it's relevant to our life partner. What's actually happening on the surface in our day-to-day. We get up, we make each other coffee, we have breakfast, we have a chat. Some people go off to work, some people might not. Some people work from home, some people, it's completely different, whatever is happening for you. Some people are looking after the family. But we have our day-to-day life. This is the music, this is the lyrics, this is what we say to each other, and it's the rhythm. But then there's a deeper level of why are we here and what is our purpose, and are we feeling into the experience of our life? That is a life worth living. That is a marriage that fuels a purpose for existence and further growth and development and expansion of yourself and what it's all about. And I just wanted to leave you with that thought. If your life partner is not challenging you, what's the point? But if you're just living a lovely, happy, harmonious existence, how can you give it more purpose and make it deeper? Now, I've written my 9 principles. They're a little bit dog-eared. That's what I've been looking at. Look, because they've been on the fridge for so long now. And I just have it stuck up on my fridge, and I just look at it every day, along with my 7 key relationships, the 2 things that are stuck up on my fridge. And I recommend that you write them down and do the same. Don't necessarily try and think too much. Go back, watch this video again. But just become aware of how you're applying these principles in your life and how you're showing up in your life partnership. Thanks so much for sharing your precious, precious time with me today. I I'm sending all of my love and gratitude and peace from my heart to yours, remembering to own your own path and create your own peace. And I will see you in the next video.